Lanval as object. In a society long characterized as nasty and brutish, love itself was an expression of noble dominance. In medieval romances, the very idea of romance is itself distinguished from the peasant practice of rolling in the hay, explicitly so. Lanval is constructed as a character in a particular way to convey authorial intent. Lanval is politically disconnected, a stranger in a mythical land, having no recourse to worldly power. He has no place in the male-dominated society, and is rather low on the hierarchy. Lanval upsets the expectation of the audience, and is a force acted upon by a divine female figure, with the protagonist ultimately being nothing more than something moved by the object of his amorous passion, displaying feminine characteristics out of step with gender norms of the day. The text of Lanval is one that could not have arisen from a male aristocratic perspective. She does not apologize for her gender in the introduction. Courtly love, as typically depicted, is an expression of power by the knightly order. The knight in shining armor, of the ideal of it, is one that served a mythical purpose for the political order, justifying and excusing the feudal system. By extension, courtly love is a code of values regulating aristocratic sexuality and regulating breeding. In a direct sense, bloodlines are very important in hereditary monarchies, and thus, in a continent dominated by them, mating is going to have to be regulated by something. This mating ritual revolved around feats of strength by men, and women as captive booty to be seized by the strongest. Instead, Lanval shows a broken, depressed shell of a knight saved and entranced by the woman he loves. Germanic literature has at its core inciting passages, and if Lanval had one, it would be when Arthur's wife accuses him of homosexuality. Instead of being incited to combat or going into exile of an Indarba, he submits, as Socrates did to the Athenians, to Arthur's judgment. Here Arthur is raw, animalistic, and we can see the very hamasha that must explain his failure, despite his unparalleled prowess as outlined by many, to unite the British Isles like the kings of Wessex managed to do. So the character of Lanval's suitor comes to rescue her lover from the fate sealed by Arthur. If Arthur is the picture of masculinity, Lanval is swaying toward womanish values, and the Queen's indictment of his sexuality is not only profoundly insulting but conveys narrative intent. Lacking a Merlin figure to stand in for the reader, the Lais narrative style conveys directly. Marie intends for the reader to see Lanval as less than manly. But Lanval's savior, the woman of another world, is clearly there to upset the balance of forces between the genders in the conventions of medieval romance. Without selling or mortgaging land. She was dressed in this manner, in a white cloak and sift which let both her sides be seen, as they were laced on either side. Her wealth is liquid, accessible, even non-physical. Her wealth is platonic. The erotic imagery is bound up in the color of white. Purity, divinity, and status are the conclusions to be drawn from this. Royal power was said to derive from divine favor. Abiding near a stream, having met through stochastic means, and other clues suggest this lady and her attending women are more than an errant noblewoman seeking amorous suitors. Without her, Lanval is a man in a field. Sexuality, and female sexuality is power. She must breed with a suitor to produce any offspring for the bloodlines that are so important in hereditary monarchies. Gods were often associated with love and with eroticism, so her beauty is not unlike an Aphrodite or Venus. This revealing clothing is also bold, not just for Lanval but for anyone who would see. It is something we would expect in private, and her boldness suggests she is beyond the masculine power that would normally seek to control female sexual expression. Lanval is not in control of this, and is in fact controlled by it. Being enraptured is only empowering for the male heroes if they seek their object. We may have expected that Lanval, already low, was going to descend further along in his peripatetic, but this lovely image tells us otherwise. She had a lovely body, a long waist, a neck whiter than snow on a branch. She had sparkling eyes and white skin, a beautiful mouth, a well-formed nose, dark eyebrows, and a lovely forehead slash and curling golden hair. No golden thread cast such a gleam slash as did her hair against the sun. The sun itself was seen as divine by ancients, and even by the Romans. The last day of the week, set aside by Christians as the Sabbath, was named after Sol Invictus, or the unconquered sun Sensuct is not the only feeling elicited by these octosyllabic lines, as here we see direct evidence of her other charms. Her mantle was dark purple, she had wrapped its ends around her. She holds a sparrowhawk on her fist, and a greyhound runs behind her. Purple is imperial and royal. Hunting and the diet that it would net is part of the aristocratic culture. She is nearly beyond verbal expression, her appearance a mystical theophany playing both heartstrings and hormones. What is she exactly? Why can he not share her existence with others? She is a goddess, she is something in which only he can believe, and know, and uttering her in speech is to profane her. Phobos is part of catharsis, but Lanval is so drugged by his experience of loving this being that he feels no fear of the king. He clearly will not be falling or succumbing as we have seen other heroes who fail in their quest. There is something Christ-like in his stoic patience, driven by sweeping faith. Lanval finds his victory in his love, and through no exertion save his boundless passion, he elevates himself to demigod status. 1 foot is in the mortal world, and 1 foot in whatever lays outside that. Lanval, when neglected, turns around and gives, even when he was wronged and envied by the other knights of Arthur. Lanval is an expression of feminine qualities of giving, loving, against the very grain of masculine Cleos seeking knightly culture. Lanval, while his ending is a happy one, is an object rather than a driver of his own story. Our expectations of a medieval romance are fairly simple. The reader opens them and expects a quest motif, driven by martial valor, leading to erotic passages and perhaps a happy ending. Occasionally, like in Yonek, you can get a slightly tragic story. But the main driver of the plot is the man, and the object is the woman. Between the twin aims of martial renown and chasing a courtly love, Lanval does neither and is actually chased by his beloved, and spirited away in an almost literal sense. Unique among medieval narratives, a woman has power and uses it to save her love. This is a reversal of audience expectation and an origin story for the Lady of the Lake. Lanval transcends the flesh and the desires of the erotic to find union with his beloved's form. He rejects the courtly martial society in a final way, after suffering with it, and disappears into another realm, uplifted by his love.